Welcome to our web development class. In this class, we will look at Chapter 9, and we will look at some issues involving creating a responsive design in lieu of the different browsers. Okay, a couple terms that we may have looked at earlier and that you will see in other books. Graceful degradation. This is what we did in the early days of the web. As soon as a new feature came out, we would incorporate it and our site would be the most modern as possible. And then we would realize that other browsers don't support that. So then we would need to go back in and work some rewrites or add something to support the older browsers. In today's world, we use the concept of progressive enhancement, meaning we first create the basic site with the basic functionalities that work nicely in all the browsers. Then we add the newer features that the newer browsers will support. Therefore, nothing is broken because the older browsers will ignore the newer features that they can't read. And this is technically the opposite of graceful degradation. So, how are some of the ways that we can test for browser support? Alright, well, before we start testing for browser support, one of the first things you should always do is to validate your HTML and CSS. Remember, good code is very important. Correctly written code is also important. Alright, there are some tools out there specifically for testing IE. Unfortunately, it seems like IE is one of the big issues that we have. So it's not a bad idea to always test in an IE tester if possible. Alright, we also have a website, caniuse.com, and that will show you what various features are supported in what browsers. So this is kind of nice to know before you start designing. And we also have this very nice JavaScript library called Moderniser. And this helps us to test browser capabilities. It also adds the HTML5 shim support for browsers such as IE9 that do not support the newer HTML5 structural elements. Alright, so let's talk about Moderniser because it's used a lot in the industry. Alright, first of all, it is a JavaScript library and it detects which HTML5 and CSS features your visitor's browser would support. Alright, and based on that, it allows you to develop, in order to support these features or to provide a fallback for browsers that do not support them. It also includes the HTML5 shim or shiv so that you don't have to provide that in a separate JavaScript file. Now remember, it doesn't fill in the gaps, it just detects them. Alright, so let's talk a little bit more about Moderniser. Alright, in order to use it, you first need to download the file, and the website is posted in the documentation, moderniser.com. And when you incorporate this file and you load it, you will actually see classes being added to the HTML element. And these classes will either support features or have a no in front of them that don't support features. So this is what you would need to do for the different browsers to find out a better way of finding out what is supported or not. Alright, knowing this, it allows you to write some kind of fallback code for features that in your CSS code. Alright. You also can conditionally load JavaScript or CSS files based on whether these features are supported or not. So let's take a look, and there's a lot of documentation out there on this. Let's take a look at what Moderniser might look like. Alright, in the top, this is what would be added to your HTML elements. So in other words, we're dynamically adding all these classes. And if this was Chrome 16, you can see that Chrome 16 pretty much supports everything. And now in the second figure, here we have Moderniser in IE 9. And you can see there's a lot of no's here. And this gives us a little bit more insight into what features might not be supported. So we can just take those classes and we can incorporate them into our CSS and add fallbacks, so to speak. Alright, so let's take a look at how this might be accomplished. Alright, so let's take a look first in the HTML. Here we have a div ID equals music, and we have an HTML5 audio element with 2 source files. Now supposing the browser did not understand HTML5 audio, alright, what you would still have those buttons sitting there, alright, so you don't want those buttons sitting there. As a matter of fact, you don't want that div there at all, unless you want to put something else inside there, and you might need a little JavaScript to do that. Alright, so if we take a look at the CSS, what Moderniser will do, it will automatically generate these classes for us. Alright, so remember that this is happening dynamically when your web page is viewed on the visitor's browser. But knowing in advance, you can set these classes up and add the styles, so in the event that they don't have audio support, you can tell the browser not to display the div there. Alright, some other ways of using Moderniser with JavaScript. On the left-hand column, these are some commonly used HTML5 CSS features. And on the middle column, this is the actual CSS property that would be generated by Moderniser. So if you were to hyphenate this with a no, it would be the non-support. And we have the ability to actually check this using JavaScript with the syntax modernizer.fontface, modernizer.canvas, etc. So there's a lot of ways that we can use Moderniser. Alright, so how would that work? Alright, here again, let's do this testing with the audio. So we would have an if condition, if modernizer.audio, and in the event that they did support audio, the browser, we can write some JavaScript code. Else, meaning they didn't support it, and that should be a lowercase e, it would mean we can write some code if those properties are not supported. We are also looking at using JavaScript for responsive navigation in this week, and I have additional videos, URLs, and code samples in order to accomplish that. Lastly, another thing that we can do with media queries is use them to find devices that support high-resolution images. A lot of our newer handhelds and even our desktops are supporting higher resolutions, and so not only can our media queries determine page width, that we can also determine our device pixel ratio. And this is an example of the ability to load a higher resolution image in the event that the situation might warrant it.